Chapter 25, Section 1. The Roman Catholic Church had a huge influence on the Middle Ages. Daily life revolved around the church. It was at the church where you would have religious ceremonies for the king or the vassal or the knight. It was, most holidays were church related. You didn't eat meat on Fridays. Most people didn't because it was a church rule. You would have mass at the church, a worship service on Sundays. Schools and hospitals were run by church leaders. Monks and nuns would help travelers. Marriage, burial, birth records, all done by the priest. The church also played a role in political life as well. Church officials helped kings and nobles rule Western Europe. High church officials usually were the largest landowners, meaning they were lords and vassals themselves. Church officials would advise kings and nobles. Local priests were expected to tell people to respect the kings and the nobles. People were told to obey the king's laws, unless the king's law went against canon law. Canon law is church law. If you disobeyed canon law or you disobeyed the Pope, you could be excommunicated. You could lose your membership in the church. You would also lose your political rights as well. So people were told to obey the king's law as long as the king's law fell within line to the church law. The church did face problems with heresy. Heresy is these beliefs that go against the church. And heresy, at first they tried to stop heresy by preaching about it. But in 1129, an inquisition, a church court, will be set up. And the Inquisition is going to try to end heresy by force. People were given 1 month to confess. Come in before the end of the month and you confess that you've been a part of heresy against the church teachings, and you might get whipped or you might get a little short prison sentence. But if you didn't come in after a month, people were seized and forced on trial. And they would try to get a confession at the trial. And people who confessed could become church members again. And the court would call 2 witnesses for the people. And the court would decide then if that person is a heretic or not. And if you were deemed to be a heretic and you didn't confess, you were tortured, many times by being burned at the stake.